Thanks again for tuning into Moonshine Gaming. Today we're going to be discussing the top 10 rarest and most expensive Nintendo Wii games. Now, as per usual, we have a few parameters we're going to be following for this list. We won't be including not for resale, case variants, homebrews, or collector's editions in this list. We're going to be using the North American Complete in-box pricing for the prices in this list. Now what that means is that the game case, game, instruction manual, and inserts, if they were included, will be included in the prices listed in this video. Now without further ado, let's get into it. First up, we've got Klonoa. This is a side-scrolling platform game released in 2009. This game is exclusive to the Nintendo Wii and is technically a remake of the PS1 game Klonoa Door to Phantomile. Or is it Phantomile? I still to this day don't know how to pronounce it. Whatever, moving on. The player controls the protagonist Klonoa through each of the game's stages. These are represented in a 2.5D perspective, with gameplay itself taking place within a 2D plane. Klonoa can use a large ring called the Wind Bullet to grab enemies who become inflated and can be used as either a projectile weapon or as an extra jump boost to reach higher places. Inflated enemies can also be thrown into either the foreground or the background. Some stages end with a boss, which take place within either 2D planes or large circular 3D arenas. With the game running at 60 frames per second, gameplay feels slick and the graphics are actually really good. The game is relatively short and fairly easy for the most part. There were a few minor enhancements made with the Wii version, which included making the game easier to control and more intuitive, such as altered level designs, and the speed at which Klonoa runs and his attack range. Sadly, despite its positive reception, it was a commercial failure, resulting in Bandai Namco scrapping the planned remake of a second game, along with any potential future installments. So this is technically the last Klonoa game which was released, which is kind of sad because this is a really cool franchise. This game's worth $120. Next up, we've got Ju-On the Grudge. This is a survival horror game that was released in 2009. The game is based on the movie of the same name and is centered around a family that moves into a cursed house. The game plays out kind of like a haunted house simulator. There are no weapons, no healing items, and no health bar. The only thing you're given is a flashlight, which you control with the Wii Nunchuck controller. Some of the environments are kind of creepy, but still feel empty and blocky when playing the game. Some of the environments include an abandoned factory, derelict apartments, and more. The graphics are bad, the presentation is bad, the gameplay is bad, and the game is extremely slow and not really scary at all. Also, there's no checkpoint system. Because the game is so slow, if you miss something, you'll be wasting a ton of time backtracking or having to redo it without the convenience of checkpoints. There also is a multiplayer mode, which gives the second player the ability to trigger jump scares on screen. Unfortunately, this mode isn't really scary or fun either. If you're looking for a good horror game with solid gameplay, this isn't it. This is a bad game. It sucks. Don't play it. But if you're a horror fan, I guess it could make a good collection piece. This game's worth $122. Next up, we've got Metroid Prime Trilogy. This is a compilation disc of all three Metroid Prime games that was released in 2009. The amount of value and content packed into this game is insane. Also, all three games included in the compilation received review scores of no lower than 90% on Metacritic. Wow. For those who have not played the Metroid Prime games, they took the very essence of the classic 2D Metroid titles starring space bounty hunter Samus Aran and transitioned them into 3D games with a first-person perspective. These 3D adaptations thrust you into the role of Samus and challenge you to explore an isolated planet, solve environmental puzzles using her multitude of gadgets, from the morph ball to bombs and missiles, shooting down enemies, navigating platform-heavy obstacle courses, fighting bosses, and more. With tight controls and insanely clever level design mashed together into one believable world, these games are incredibly fun and satisfying. Metroid Prime Trilogy was acclaimed by critics, with praise for the new controls, updated presentation, achievement system, and overall value. If you've played these games before, you'll find some fabulous enhancements waiting, but the actual content is roughly the same. The game was also re-released digitally on the Wii U Nintendo eShop in 2015. I can confidently say that this is probably one of the best compilation games out there. This game's worth $124. Next up, we've got Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. This game is a tactical RPG that was released in 2007. This is the 10th entry in the Fire Emblem series and acts as a direct sequel to the 2005 GameCube game Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Radiant Dawn's plot begins in the war-torn nation of Dane, with the main character Micaiah and her allies, the Dawn Brigade, rebelling against the oppressive Benyon occupational army. The story is divided into 4 parts and changes perspective between different factions within the continent of Tellius. The gameplay is similar to Path of Radiance and previous Fire Emblem titles, with units moving across a grid-based map in turn-based battles, and characters unrelated to the core plot being subject to permanent death if defeated. The experience is anything but Wii-like, as the game uses no motion control, no IR, no Mii integration, and no online capabilities. While some gamers will scoff at this fact, die-hard Fire Emblem fans understand the choice made by Nintendo, as the series hasn't needed to change anything in nearly 20 years, and shouldn't be expected to now. My only gripe with the game is that most of the storytelling is done with static drawings over painted backgrounds. Also, when characters interact outside of the full motion video cutscenes, there's no voiceovers. The gameplay is incredible, and if you're looking for a tactical strategy game, this is probably one of the best that Nintendo Wii has to offer. Check it out if you're into tactical RPGs. This game's worth $126. Next up, we've got Sakura Wars So Long My Love. This is a cross-genre game that's a combination of tactical RPG, dating sim, and visual novel that was released in 2010. First off, this game was actually 5 years old on release. The Sakura Wars series was very big in Japan, and Sega decided to finally take the leap and introduce the series to North American consumers with this game. Set in a fictionalized version of the late 1920s, the game follows Japanese naval lieutenant Shinjiro, who is dispatched to New York City to train with the New York Combat Review, a troupe of magical women who defend the city from supernatural threats while also working in a theater company. Shinjiro must prove himself worthy to lead the Combat Review as they try to stop Oda from world domination. The narrative is divided between Combat Review's fight against the demonic forces and each member's personal struggles. The game is mostly a dating sim which requires you to maintain relationships through conversation. There are turn-based RPG sections, but there is no level up mechanic. The way you power up your team for battle is by maintaining good relationships. Happy characters gain stat bonuses for that chapter's battles, and Shinjiro can also garner some goodwill by taking hits for his team. Friendships also improve the likelihood of combo attacks occurring, as well as unlocking super special ultimate techniques involving both you and your chosen soulmate. Sakura Wars is a niche game within a niche genre, and if you're an open-minded gamer, I think you'll find a cheerful experience with this quirky and very anime-style game. This game's worth $131. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit that like button. Next up, we've got American Mensa Academy. This is a brain training educational game released in 2012. In the game, players can complete a series of minigames back-to-back and receive a score. If their score is low, players are encouraged to keep trying until they can improve their skills. The game doesn't really teach the players any special skills, instead it relies on them to keep replaying the minigames over and over until something clicks inside their mind and they figure out how to complete the minigames more quickly and accurately. The game's minigames are relatively simple and not very memorable. While it is entirely possible to enjoy some local split-screen multiplayer, Mensa Academy doesn't support online matchmaking. It may seem like a small complaint given the genre, but it would have been great to see this implemented. Also, not being able to adjust the difficulty settings was unfortunate as well. In my opinion, playing this style of game seems to work a little bit better on handheld consoles, and although Mensa Academy is actually available on the 3DS, other games like Big Brain Academy and Brain Age definitely hit the mark better. This game's worth $135. Next up, we've got Fritz Chess. This is a chess simulator that was released in 2009. The game includes single-player and multiplayer modes for up to 2 players, and allows users to partake in various chess games, which include Classic Chess, Chess 960, or Giveaway. The game also allows users to establish and maintain an ELO score, which is a rating system for calculating the relative skill levels of players. Fritz is generally considered the best computer chess program in the world, and has beat a plethora of grandmasters. In the game, they found a way to implement this across all skill levels, and one of the best features of Fritz is how well it plays bad chess. It manages to convincingly play a naive game in the style of an amateur human player. This is incredible if you're new to chess and wanting to play against opponents of similar skill level. There's also animated cutscenes with strange characters to liven things up between games in the adventure chess mode. There's no motion controls, but there isn't really a need for any, so that's not really a downside. For what it is, the game is great, and it gets all the important things right. Mainly, playing chess to the right level to let you learn. This game's worth $157. Next up, we've got Veggy World. This is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up that was released in 2010. In this game, you control a strawberry-shaped spaceship that flies through broccoli-covered landscapes and turnip tree houses. You fire lasers and blue pellets at a steady wave of fruit and vegetable creatures. You'll be able to collect money, which in turn can be used to upgrade your weapons for more versatile attacks. This is most definitely a bargain bin game, and although I like the bright colors and animation, the game is not very good. It's uncommon to make it through a whole level without experiencing lag, and the shooting sounds are annoying and ear-piercing. The game implements the Wii remote sensor and motion control. I actually think the game would have worked better in controller mode, as the point and shoot with the remote kind of felt weird. There are a ton of better shooters on the Wii, and as far as gameplay goes, this is a hard pass for me. This game's worth $197. Next up, we've got Fragile Dreams, Farewell Ruins of the Moon. This is a horror/action RPG that was released in 2009. The player character, Seto, must traverse the ruins of Tokyo and the surrounding areas, looking for human survivors and fighting off ghosts and other apparitions. The Wii Remote functions as a flashlight, used not only to illuminate areas, but also to slow down enemies and reveal hidden messages later in the game. It makes a great change from the usual design mentality of the Nintendo Wii, that any character using a weapon must use waggle controls with the controller. And this is just the first example of many smart touches throughout this game. The voice acting is great and feels really authentic, and the atmosphere and the story are fantastic.
I was 15 years old at the end of that summer. When we met, the tower in the distance was bathed in crimson light.
The only downside is the simplistic combat. Although there are a bunch of different weapons, the lack of maneuverability in battle hinders the game somewhat. I think a strafe or roll mechanic would have been a good addition, though it's worth pointing out that Seto is just a normal boy on an adventure, so it makes sense that he's not diving around like a warrior. The beautiful graphics, great cutscenes, creepy atmosphere, and incredible plot make this a must-play. This game's worth $210. Next up, number 1, Dokapon Kingdom. This is another cross-genre game which mixes RPG elements with board game style gameplay. This was released in 2010. At the time this game came out, the Mario Party games were starting to feel a bit stale, and Atlus decided to jump on that opportunity and bring this Japanese franchise over to North America. Unlike many other party games, Dokapon Kingdom doesn't center its gameplay around minigames, but rather fuses the party genre with the role-playing genre to create an experience like none other. Though the game doesn't have motion control, it still feels like a perfect fit on the Nintendo Wii. It's also worth pointing out that the game supports 480p, something that the PS2 version lacked. The game is played on a giant board where 4 players will compete to become champion. You'll select a character and class before the game begins, and the king will assign you objectives that must be completed. Each turn will have players spinning a spinner, moving around the board, casting spells, using items, and landing on spaces with different effects. The spaces can either benefit or harm the player. For example, you might be rewarded some cash or forced into battle. Although the graphics and audio can feel subpar at times, the unique mix of RPG, party game, and strategic customization definitely make this game stand out from the other party games on this system. This game's worth $267. And that's going to do it for the video. We hope you enjoyed the top 10 rarest and most expensive Nintendo Wii games. Which games do you have? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to stay up to date with our awesome video game content, don't forget to subscribe to Moonshine Gaming. We'll see you next time. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, you might like these.